Who'd like to start the ball rolling? Is there a particular question scenario that you'd like to throw over to the panel?
Yeah, actually, like I have actually joined the Toastmasters in October, and I still haven't chosen a pathway because there are 11 pathways, and it's not an easy thing to actually, like for me as a newbie, it's not an easy thing to choose because there's so many things to get in between. But how can I actually make like I tell you that what I want to do is I want to do public speaking, plus at the same time I want to do a leadership.
Okay. All right, you've posed us a few little scenarios there, and rather than going into too deep, I think there's probably one or two things that I'm going to throw over to Mike Diggins to start the ball rolling. Mike, what sort of process would you suggest at club level and that Carnell should take on board, and moving forward from there succinctly, please?
Well, I'll try. Number one, think about what you want to get out of Toastmasters as a new member. There are 4 basic directions that you can travel along with our education program, for which the delivery mechanism is called Pathways. There's 2 on public speaking. One addresses a large audience and one addresses smaller groups. That's public speaking and interpersonal communication. The leadership side is again split into 2, and one of those involves leading by pulling people through a process, and the other one is leading by getting behind people and pushing. Pulling people through is strategic leadership. Pushing is the management option. So it really depends on what you're looking to do. I believe you mentioned public speaking. Well, is that in a large group or small group? Possibly you'll be looking at a combination of the 2. You may want to look at both of those, and then you combine that with a third option. Either you're looking at strategic leadership or management. It's based around the American college system. You do 2 majors and a minor in the American college system, and that's where these 4 directions and these 3 choices come from. It really, what I'd suggest you do is talk this through with someone, a formal or informal mentor, and get to the bottom of exactly why you joined Toastmasters in the first place. And that will give you an idea of what directions you want to go in of those 4. Once you work that out, choosing a path from those, each combination of 3 out of 4 defines one of the 10 base paths, and on top of that, we've got the engage with humour one. But in essence, that's what it is. There is a self-assessment that will help you get through that. But really, the clearer you have an idea of what you want to get out of Toastmasters, and that can involve talking it through, the more likely you are to be able to choose a path easily.
Great. Thank you for that, Mike. Georgie, I'd like you to just give us your view as to what you would do at club level. Someone is brain speaking you like our man here. What would you suggest should happen at club level to make sure that he is inducted into Pathways and gets into the system as soon as possible? Because one of the things that scares me, ladies and gentlemen, is something that our past district director, Neil Stishby, told me last year when I was club growth director, and that is we lose 60% of our new members before they log into Pathways and even before they do their Icebreaker speech. And what a waste of time and effort that is, to lose 60% of all the new members. So we need to do something, Georgie. What would you do, Georgie?
Thank you, Stephen. Well, I think there's a couple of issues. One is, if your club is using pathways, if the committee of your club, the executive, are using pathways and are familiar and competent with it, then ask one of them to mentor you through that early stage. Now, you should have been given a mentor officially from the club members when you first joined. But if you haven't, or if that mentor is not au fait with pathways or not feeling competent with pathways, by all means, tap your VP education on the shoulder and say, I need someone to help me one-on-one with pathways. The second thing I would suggest is, if that's not happening, find out who is the pathways coach for your area. Now, people like myself and Mike and a myriad of other people have put their hands up to help people, not just in one club, but in a whole area of clubs. And we can do that, again, one-on-one. I'm a pathways coach, and I regularly meet one-on-one with people, either over Zoom and talk them through it, sharing screens, or I tell them, I'll meet you at my favourite coffee house. You can order my latte. Free Wi-Fi, and we sit there with your laptop, not mine, but your one, and go through it step by step until you can do those initial steps yourself and make those choices. Stephen.
That's the perfect answer, Georgia. I knew I'd get that from you. It's important that the participation by you to feel what you're doing is done, because then things happen. Mabel, do you want to just add anything that we may have missed out on there, or some part of your experience?
Thanks, Stephen. I think I'll just add a little bit. I'd like to definitely acknowledge what Georgie just said, where you take them through step by step and just share with them on their own computer, because I've had that experience as well at my club. I think there's a lot of information that people kind of feel a bit intimidated about with pathways. And they do take a bit of time to actually go in and decide on a path, because the information is too much. But if somebody sits with them and talks them through and gives them some pointers, it's a great start. And the mentor, definitely. Yes.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's been reiterated by three people, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be sitting beside someone who's been there, someone that you can trust, you feel comfortable with, that you can share which journey you wish to go down and go through. And always question. If you're not comfortable with a question or an answer, I'll come to you in a minute, Georgie, then ask it again. And because the Pathways champions, the Pathways people are asked to be patient, to make sure that what you ask for is answered and there is clarity in that particular solution. Georgie, you wanted to add something again?
I was just going to actually say pretty much what you've said is, don't be scared to ask again and again and again until it's clear in your head. Because I tell people it took me 12 months to figure out how to do the basics and pathways, because every time I went there, it was overwhelming and I didn't ask for help, which is not like me. I usually jump in as soon as I need to know something. But once I did ask for help and I went back to the same person, Mike, time and time and time again, until it started to make sense. Once it started to make sense, I was away. You know, it's a bit like learning to drive a clutch car, a geared car. It takes ages. And then all of a sudden, everything just comes together and it happens and away you go. So don't be scared to ask over and over again.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit more to that last point there, is that sometimes you think, well, that's a dumb question, but I'll tell you what, there's no such thing as a dumb question. It's just a really good question in disguise. Now, Sandy, before I come to you, there's a question here in the chat, and it goes, I'm a new member and I feel like I want to be one of those paths, persuasive influence or presentation mastery. Mike, what's the difference?
The short answer is that the The difference is that presentation mastery majors you in both of the communication sides. And the other one was persuasive influence, was it?
Yes.
Sorry, my forgetter is getting better and better. Persuasive influence tends to more towards, you're trying to persuade typically a small audience. So persuasive influence, I think, has got a bit more interpersonal communication than public speaking. And presentation mastery balances those two. So you essentially, what you're saying is that you want to learn to speak in front of any size of audience. That's where the differences are. What I'd suggest you do is go on to the Toastmasters website, toastmasters.org, and go into the pathways, starting the startup one. You'll see all of the paths defined, but each one has got a little, maybe 2 or 3 sentences on what you're going to learn from this path. And I found those are very, very useful in focusing me on what a path can actually give, and gives me a basis to ask some meaningful questions. While we're on the subject of questions, we need to bear in mind that with some cultures, as Stephen said, there is no such thing as a dumb question, but some people need convincing of that, and some people actually need permission to ask questions. So it's a matter of, I need you to ask questions, because if you don't ask questions, I don't know what you don't understand, so I can't help you.
Good point.
And so sometimes you have to do that with people. Some cultures, that's quite common. It's linked to losing face.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mike. Samar, does that answer your question? Good. I can lip read you. Now, Sandy, you had your hand up before.
Hello, everyone. I'm not quite sure. I mean, the topic has probably passed a bit. I just wanted to add for the start into pathways. We had sessions that we just had as an educational, and we all sat down together with our computers and had a look at the pathways together. So there was a bit of a chat amongst us. So it was not one person asking a dumb question or anything. And I think it was a brilliant way to give it a kickstart. And then everyone knew that we all had questions. And I think it was a great uptake in our club with pathways, where I think actually all of them in some pathways already way on the way. So that's a good idea too, just to do this as a group, as one of the meetings completely, and just sit down together.
Sandy, which club's that?
That's in Napier Pania Club.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Very good thinking for Pania to do that. And I hope other clubs take that on board too, because you learn by associating with fellow Toastmasters who have got similar situations. Fine, thank you very much. Now, we've got another question in the chat, and it goes, are you guys going to be covering details like uploading evaluations, submitting speeches on different levels, finding out what the next assignment is, etc., or is there a tutorial? Mike, if you can answer that again succinctly so we can keep moving, because I think we've got a few other questions coming through, and then Dom will come to you next.
Yeah. Okay. Succinctly, because I'm going to have to share a screen here. Let's look at the uploading evaluations, because this is an area of confusion that comes up again and again and again. And load up Toastmasters. Yeah, I know but I assume you've seen this bit as well. All the logging on. If I've remembered that one right. Okay, right, now I can go to Basecamp as a member. And this is the Basecamp. I'll just bring the zoom factor on the screen down a little bit so as we can see everything. On the left-hand side, you've got your education transcript. This is where you find out what your how far you are along a path, how far you are along a level. And to answer that question very, very briefly, when you go into a path, you will see for any given level, you will see the, okay, open curriculum. Bear in mind that we've had a major update in the last few days, but you'll see a status up here. It's in progress or not activated. You haven't started that one yet. And that's how you tell what you've done and what you haven't done in any given level. And you'll see on the left-hand side, you've got ticks as to your progress through the levels. To come back to I'll just go back to the home screen. To come back to this uploading stuff, there's two ways of doing it. My documents takes you directly to where you want to go, and my feedback takes you to the old feedback, the original feedback screen. Key point here, notice that the default here is feedback, and that seems quite reasonable for posting evaluations. It's also wrong. If you want to store anything within Pathways, you need to go to the ePortfolio option and then Documents. And that gives you a library for each level and a library for anything that's that you might want to, anything else you might want to put in. From there, it's a pretty standard file upload. You come into a level and it says add the file. What I suggest you do, because most of you will be doing more than one path, I would suggest that you start your file name with the initials for the path. And that saves an awful lot of confusion when you go on to a second and subsequent path as to which icebreaker you're talking about. But from there, it's just a matter of, here we go, this is what I've got stored. I've got an add file button. I'm not going to go any further than that because that's then into a standard dialogue. To answer the question about tutorials, the answer is yes, there is on pretty much everything. But the key thing that I want to point out here is that if it hasn't changed out of sight, right, tutorials and resources, tutorials. You'll see that there's a tutorial on just about anything. And when you go into your Pathways initial homepage, you see a bunch of tiles, and that includes tutorials. Each one of those tutorial tiles is actually a menu, so there's half a dozen underneath there. Now I'm hoping that answers that question, because it's a matter of where you go, what your starting points are. My experience is this is an IT project, and my experience is that most people have problems because they haven't worked out what the starting point for a process is. Once they get that, they're fine. Stephen, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Carolina, does that answer your question? If you can have a thumbs up or a yes. Otherwise, we're going to go through to Dom. You had your hand up before, Dom, and you're upside down now. No, you're up right now.
I'll fix that. There you go. Sorry about that. So I was looking at the IT aspect. That was actually really helpful. So thanks so much. Yeah, quick question. I was really following on from before. If we were to do if we had, for example, a bunch of new members all at once who were a wee bit anxious about starting a pathway, do you think it would be wise, for a mentor type person to maybe guide a group through a pathway, or would you more encourage it to be on an individual basis?
Well, I'm going to pass this question over to Mabel. If you want to start the ball rolling, then Georgie, if you want to just add your 10 cents worth after that.
Stephen, yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I would be inclined to do a one-on-one, but I think if there's a group of people who probably are on the same wavelength, they're at the same level in the journey, they're all starting together, then you could possibly. I've been attending some of those sessions with Mike at the library where we have kind of like an open session one day, and we just inform the club members and tell them, come along for anything that you're interested in knowing about Pathways. And that way we are addressing a group of people together. They do have different questions, but it's a collective group.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Georgie, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I agree. It's great to go to something like what you and Mike are running, but that's fine if you live in Auckland. We live in the Waikato. And one of the things that I would suggest to a club, if they've got several new members who are not yet getting into Pathways, is organise for a Pathways workshop as a club night, even if you started a little bit earlier, so that those members who feel quite comfortable with Pathways don't have to attend, or have it as an educational, but like a half-hour educational, and get those other more experienced members to sit one-on-one with the new people so that they can help answer the questions as the workshop progresses, and address the most basic things like how to sign on, how to find Basecamp, how to choose a path. And also, one of the things I've found important is to make new people realise that if they do the assessment for the paths and they get the 3 recommendations, they don't have to choose one of those 3. They can actually go and look into each of the paths or speak to another member, find another path that they think will fit them better and choose one of those. Because I found in talking to people that they thought they had to choose one of the 3 recommended. And I think it's important that we just sit and help people with the real basic things to give them confidence to take the next step from there themselves.
Yeah.
That's a good answer there, Georgie. Look, there are 11 paths that are available to you. The computer, if you go through the system, will spit out 3, the best option according to the matrix that's been applied, 2 other options. Now you can take one of those 3 or any one of the other 8 that are available. Or if you want to be really, really greedy, take all 3 or take even more of those, because they are relatively cheap. It's $20 per path. I'll come to you in a minute, Mike. I do have a question. Recently, Toastmasters International gave us the opportunity of picking up a free path if we signed up or paid up our dues at the last dues period. Has everybody who is entitled to taken up that particular option? If we can just have an indication of hands, I definitely have. Yep, there's a few. So there's a few that I don't know whether they have or entitled or not, but if you haven't, please do it, because you don't have to use it straight off. You can bank it literally and pick it up at a later time. Make sure it's one that you want to have fun with, or if it's a more work related, or something that you can sort of get your hands into, just do that there. Do we have any Basecamp managers who wish to ask some questions? Oh, actually, we've got a hand up, a thumbs up. Any Basecamp managers there? Tim, do you have any questions, or is there anything that you wanted to share with us or throw at us at this stage? You'll have to unmute yourself, Tim.
Yeah, I'd like to commend, I think it's Mike, who put out this Pathways map that was sent out to all VPNs. Do you recognise it? Is that available? Is that on the website?
Elizabeth, do you want to answer that, please?
I've just put it in the chat box. You can download it from the website. It was original from Kingsley. Wendy sent it to many clubs.
Oh, okay.
All of them who had 7 club officers at the previous club officer training got it.
So it is available for download off the 112 website.
Yes, check the link in the chat box. Just a little up now. And it's also under club officer resources.
Okay.
If you don't find it, Tim, just go back to Elizabeth and she'll help you out on that one there. She's super resourceful in that area there. But you found that very useful then?
Oh, it absolutely just opened the whole thing up, and it suddenly all made sense. Sort of in one picture tells 1,000 words, and this basically does it. And I think all club members, if they had this, that might make it a lot easier for them to navigate what it's all about.
Okay, excellent. I want to come to either Mabel or Georgie. I don't know. Are you guys Basecamp managers? Which of you two is yes? Okay, then both of you, excellent. There's a question here, and I just want to have the first part answered, if you could please. How do I know when members have completed a project in Basecamp Manager's View? Basecamp Manager's View doesn't update automatically, but members tell me that they have updated, completed, So do you want to just walk us through what happens and how slow it happens and so on, and what could happen after that even? Mabel, do you want to start the ball rolling, please?
Yes, I will share what I remember and what I know. So
Excellent.
essentially, when a member completes a part, I would say they process it at their end. And if you're a Basecamp manager, you get an email that alerts you that a certain member has completed it. It's got all the details. And that kind of triggers the whole workflow, essentially. The important step for the VP Ed to remember there is that you need to process it through the central leader as well, so that the award can be processed. Am I right, Mike?
Club Central, yes, you're right.
Yeah, two different processes there.
Yeah. So I think when I first started, that was a step I have forgotten, but now I've kind of got my head around it. So that's what I do. And if I've missed anything there.
Georgie's going to answer anything that's missed out, then I'm going to give you my spin on that one there.
Okay, I think there's two different questions here that we're not answering. One is, in the question it says, how do I know when members have completed a project? Now, there's a difference between a project and a level. Now, when they've completed a level, you will get, and they've done the completion request, you will get notification. When they've completed a project, which might be speech 2 in level 2, that you don't get a notification about. It's when they've completed the level and they've asked for a completion that you get the notification. If you want to see where your members are with their individual projects, you need to go into the reports and dig down a little bit, and that's another whole ball game altogether. But there's two different things there. One is completing a project, one is completing a level, and it's completing a level that you get the notification for.
Can't catch you out, Georgie. You're as sharp as a tack there. You're right. The difference between a project and a path is a massive difference. But the process is, you finish those projects, you get to the end of that level, then as long as you go through to that next step, which says complete notification, and that goes through to the Basecamp managers. And for those who aren't familiar, and if I'm telling you how to suck eggs, I do apologize. It's the club president, it's the vice president of education, it's the secretary who will get that notification. And once they get that notification, they have got the ability to go accept or decline. If they have any questions or doubts about a particular project or a level, there's nothing stopping them from asking you and saying, Mr. Diggins, could you just show us the evaluations that you received for such and such projects? And as we know, Mike has got it in his e-portfolio, because not suggesting that there are cheats out there, but it does lend itself to cheating the system. So please, if you do get asked, don't get offended, because if it's done outside of the club, your VP Ed or your president or your secretary may not have heard it or be aware of it and think, well, hang on, you only just started this one. How is it that you've already got to the end of this particular level already? So that's that. When a level is completed, this is the part which is my bugbear, and it goes back to my initial meeting with Isabel Carter, our Division P director, is that this is when it hits DCP. If you belong to one club, it's quite simple. You can then say to your any one of the executive, and if you're an executive, obviously you can't do that yourself, then they say, okay, I'd like to now give you level 1 from presentation mastery to the home club. Then they'll go into Club Central, go into awards and allocated as such. If you belong to multiple clubs, as a good few or good many people here do, then it's the prerogatives with the member. which club am I going to get my best bang for this particular buck? And if it's Club A or Club B, then so be it. You can use that strategically, and I'm sure during the course of the year that all those levels and all those paths will get credited to a club, because the whipper for everybody is the Triple Crown Award, where if you get 3 awards in one Toastmasters year, you will get a Triple Crown awarded at the end of the Toastmasters year. So there is that opportunity there. Mike, you had your hand up, yes.
Yes, I was just going to again point out that in the last week or so, there has been a large update to the Toastmasters website, which almost certainly incorporates feedback that the web team have had on the Pathways reporting. We've already seen one tranche of updates for that about a year or so ago, and that was a huge improvement. You can export all of the reports in there. There was a question about how do I see the members' progress. You could export those reports on a regular basis and get the progress that way. But have a look at the reporting, see what's changed, see whether it worked for you, and if it doesn't quite work for you, let Toastmasters International know. They build these things based on your feedback.
Thank you, Mike. You're quite right. Feedback back to Toastmasters International is important, because that's how we get development progressing. I
think, Stephen, then for that last tranche of changes, there was something like 5,000 evaluation points that went into those. Tim asked a very pertinent question a couple of days ago via email about where to find the list of award recipients in Club Central, not Basecamp, Club Central. Where to see how to find out who has submitted what on the club's DCP. And I'd like to just take a minute to share a screen and show that. Okay. Right. What I've done here is I have gone into the Toastmasters.org. I've selected Leadership Central and Distinguished Performance Reports. That gives you an idea of what every single district is doing. We come down to Region 12, District 112. This tells us what District 112 is doing. And on the left-hand side, you will see an item marked Daily Reports. Daily Reports. And this is a whole bunch of reporting. I'm going to leave you to have a look around this, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. But one report is the current year educational achievements. And that's organized by club. So just find your club, and that's where you can see exactly what was awarded to your club since July the 1st in the current year and who got them. So, Tim, I hope that answers your question, but it's well worth looking around this area.
Excellent. The only difficulty there is when I'm trying to work out Triple Crowns and it says name not available, and I then have to go back through the district directory. Now, Sandy, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but I'd like Baptist to unmute himself and just, he has put in a comment about every time you start a new Pathways, you start with an icebreaker and 1 or 2 speeches are repeated. Why? Can you skip those speeches? I want to know why you want to skip those speeches, Baptist.
Because the icebreakers, we don't want to go again and again doing the icebreakers.
Okay, I'm going to completely knock you out of the ballpark with this one here. I've been a Toastmaster 13 years, and I've been a member along with a lot of other members who don't know me even. Now, if I'm in a situation where I can give an icebreaker, which then reintroduces myself or a different aspect of myself to a club member or club members, wouldn't you want that to be the case? Or would you only want those people 13 years ago at Papakura Toastmasters to know my icebreaker? And I think that would be very unfair of myself. In fact, it would be very, very selfish. An icebreaker is, again, a very good chance to reintroduce ourselves. It also gives us the skills then to just zhush up our icebreakers even. So as much as some people don't like doing icebreakers, sometimes the icebreaker the icebreaker is the hardest and easiest speech that you'll ever do. So it's a good thing that we can do. Yes, we do. This level 1 is the same, irrespective of which path you are doing, but that's important that you understand the principles of the icebreaker, the foundations of the evaluation and the feedback and the application of that feedback to your next lot of speeches. Now, Sandy, do you still have your hand up?
Yes, that goes back to a question actually that we had right at the beginning of this session, that it is sometimes a bit confusing what the contents of the different pathways are. And we had some links sent around as well, and there is a lot of information out there. And I think since I've started, and I'm in level 4 of presentation mastery pathways, since I started, there's probably more pathways by now available. First of all, and this is now a new question, do we get updated when or alerted, or do we just check regularly? And if yes, where? And then the second one is I wasn't quite aware that we actually have the opportunity to give feedback on the pathways. What I was struggling a bit with is that I joined Toastmasters to be able to talk in front of a group. That was my big challenge. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it comes after 6 speeches. It comes after years of practice. And I was a bit disappointed that actually even in presentation mastery at level 4, you completely lose the track of presenting in front of a group. There is a podcast and you can, online presentation or leadership. How can is there already a pathway that really focuses on the different aspects of humorous talking and persuasive speaking and just, goes through the different levels? And I have the feeling most of them actually go into the leadership or project management. Can you help me? Has that been developed? Have I missed something? Can I give feedback? Would love to continue with that because I know left pathways because of that, or Toastmasters.
You've asked quite a few questions there. First of all, there are 11 paths, and there has been a lot of path development for a while. We started off with the 10, we've got up to 11. Yes, Toastmasters International is always open to any feedback. If you wish to contact them directly, it'll come through myself or any one of the district team. We'd be more than happy to convey that through. And as Mike was saying, that they do pick up on things like that. So it's very, very much the same. If you have a look at, I'll come to you in a minute, Mike. If you have a look at the elective speeches, it gives you the minimum that you need to do, but doesn't stop you from doing others as well. And I've found that when I've been helping out in speechcraft and the likes, I've found projects in there which I've repeated and repeated and repeated. Same project, but maybe repeated 3 or 4 times. And I've learned by teaching. I've learned by expelling my experience and knowledge to others as well. And you can still do the same. If you feel that you haven't quite got the meat out of a particular project, do it again. Speak to someone who's got the experience, speak to a mentor, speak to a very good speaker. And this is one thing I've also picked up from past champion speakers, is that they're more than willing to help you if you ask. And New Zealand has got 2 past world champions, and we've got a gentleman from down Road Railway, Kingy Biddle, who would be more than happy to go through his experience as well. And there are others as well who've made the international speech finals for district who are well presented in terms of speaking. Ask them, speak to them, and then you'll suddenly find that experience will help you understand the project more. Nothing stopping you from repeating it. It's not that you failed or anything, that you just want to take to the next level. So hopefully that answers that particular question there, Sandy.
Thank you. Yes.
Just going to say that the 11th path, the one that doesn't come, the one that's aimed at injecting humour into everything that you do in public speaking and in leadership, came, I believe, from just one question that was posed to the Pathways design team, and that was, "Where's the fun?"
Oh.
And I believe that was where an attempt to answer that question is where Engage with Humour came from.
Over to you, Tim.
Yes, just a question about these submitting education awards. My understanding was for the DCP, a member can only be counted for one award. So if they did a level 1, a level 2, and level 3, only one was counted. That appears to be incorrect.
Not correct. You'll only count if you, like I'm in 5 different parts. If I finished level 1 in all 5 of those and I wanted to submit it to the one club, only one of those would count. They still have 5, but only one of those would count for me as such. If you've got level 2 or level 3. Otherwise, how are you going to get your triple crown? And I want you to get it. I really want you to get your triple crown. So,
okay,
yeah,
so a member that does 3 or 4, even four levels in a year, they get counted for that one club.
Spot on, buddy. Spot on.
Yeah.
But not the same level for the same club in the same year, although those do figure in the district statistics, but not the DCP.
But only the PQD has to worry about that, Mike, and he's not that worried about it. We have a question here. My biggest issue is that the TM, I never recalls my password, and I have to formulate a new password every time I go to work on my pathways. Can you just go through a remedy in this situation would be probably the best way?
If you remember, the remedy is to report that to membership at Toastmasters.org, because that it's fortuitous, this, because about 20 minutes ago I signed on onto Toastmasters.org, and I didn't have to formulate a new password. I used the one that I've been using since I first became an officer and started using Club Central in 1999. I've never had to formulate a new password. You can actually reuse the previous one, I believe. I'll deny saying that, because the idea is to get a new one. But if you think that it's not working for you, the short answer is that you shouldn't have to do that. And if you think you have to, then start a dialogue with membership at Toastmasters.org and with your Vice President Education. Go through it and see if you can figure out what's going wrong, if there's something going wrong. Most frequent explanation is that you've got your caps lock key on.
Yeah.
May I say something about that?
Please.
Most websites these days ask you whether they are allowed to remember your password. That's the one function that TI does not have. So every time we need to remember our passwords and type it in. So it will not remember it for you, but it's the same password than you used the previous time. So the best remedy is to choose a very simple password and to write it down somewhere.
Yeah, for me, I'm like Mike. My one comes up automatically in the space, so I have no issue. So I'm not too sure where that's coming from. Now, Elizabeth, I pointed the wicked bone at you. You made a comment about something being tricky. Do you want to just cover that, please, quickly? It's especially tricky for new members, this project 2 on level 1, where the member must give 2 speeches and do 1 evaluation before the project is completed. This is where I was coming from. Do you want to just talk about that?
Sometimes it's difficult for the VPE to know whether someone completed the project. And it's especially difficult when it's a new member, because they do not understand that project 2 is more than 1 speech. Project 2 is 2 speeches, and the new member must do an evaluation. And that evaluation must be evaluated, mostly by the general evaluator. And only then have you completed project 2 of level 1. And that it's very difficult for most VPEs to first understand it themselves and then explain it to a new member, because it's not just 1 speech. So a project is not just 1 speech. The same when you come back to a project on level 4, like the podcast project. You do a podcast, but you come back to your club and you do a speech about the podcast. So it's no matter which project you do on your path, you always come back and you do a speech at your club. And sometimes for the level 4 projects and level 5 projects, you do more than 1 speech, because beforehand, you need to tell your club what you're going to do. Then you do the project, and then you come back and you report to the club. So again, it's 1 project, but it's 2 speeches and something that you need to do in the middle. And that's a very tricky thing to explain to someone who's new to Pathway.
Stephen, there's a question there from Carnell about does the evaluation, I presume, Carnell, you're talking about in that project 2 of level 1 where they have to do an evaluation as well as 2 speeches. You asked, does it have to actually be a speech that they evaluate, or can they have evaluated table topics?
You want to answer that question then, Georgie?
Yeah, I was going to say, in my clubs, I've never had anyone do a table topics evaluation for that project. Mike, I don't know your thoughts on it, but I don't see why it couldn't be allowed. It's just that when you do a table topics evaluation, it's like the difference between table topics and a speech. It's just a snapshot of an actual evaluation. And the point of doing the evaluation in that project is for the member to start learning the structure of an evaluation and actually get their teeth into it a little bit. And when you're doing, if you've got a 2-minute table topics, at the most you would be giving a 1-minute evaluation. There's not sufficient time really, even if you were doing 5 table topic evaluations in that meeting, there's really not sufficient time to actually do a nice meaty evaluation. And I think I would be encouraging my member to actually evaluate somebody else's speech. And if necessary, and we've done this, and I'm sure all of your clubs have done it, have a mentor sit with them or another member sit with them and even help them by giving them little, pointers for what they need to be looking at in the evaluation. The whole point is that they get started on that evaluation path.
My
answer to Georgie
would be that there is an evaluation form for every speech project, but I've never seen one for a table topic. And that's the kicker for me, that says I can't see anything in the rules that say that you, or guidelines that say that you can't, but it's not something I would recommend. Can I just make a point about that project, about that level 1 project 2? The reason that there are 2 speeches is that this is where you start distinguishing purposes, which are the reason that you're doing this particular project and this particular speech as far as Toastmasters is concerned, from objectives, which are the reason that you're doing it as far as you're concerned. Remember, you've done a speech, it's been evaluated, and you've got, what you're asked to do is take the recommendations from that evaluation and make those the objectives of your second speech. And it starts to distinguish. If we go back to the old previous set of manuals, for those that can remember that far back, we only had speech objectives. Now we've got purposes, general purpose, objectives, specific purpose, and you start to learn to distinguish between those 2. And that, I believe, is the value of that project, that you have specific objectives for the second speech based on the recommendations for the first. And that's where the learning comes from. When you've done those, when you've shown that you can take those recommendations on board and speak according to those objectives, then you're deemed dangerous enough to go out and do an evaluation for someone else. Steve.
Thank you, Mike. We're down to the last 4 minutes. I'd like to think we'll have one more question, and then I'd like to summarise the evening, what I've heard, and throw out a challenge. So is anyone with a burning question I'd like to ask us?
Dom's got his hand up.
Okay, Dom.
I've got a good one. Just real quickly. So I've done a couple of speeches. So I'm just on level 1, but I've just done Icebreaker, and I've done the first evaluation and feedback one. So, but what I've done a bit of a mistake. Like, I wasn't aware that pathways, you could track your progress. So what I'd already presented 2 speeches, but then because I chose the pathway later on, it was all out of date, online. So who do I need to speak to, or what do I have to do to make it so it's correct?
Do you have evaluations for those speeches?
Yes, but they were just written down on a piece of paper. They weren't put online or anything like that.
That's not necessary. As long as you've got them, then that shows that you've done the speech. You can then apply those to whatever projects that you want. And
okay.
this is the mirror to what was asked earlier. But oops, I went through a project without doing a speech. So you just go back and do the speech. In this case, you've been through the speech without doing the project. So you just go through the go through the relevant project and pick up the speech evaluation from there.
Okay. Yeah. No
Very
worries.
good question there, Dom. The area where you may get tripped up is that prior to any project that you're going to present is you need to do your pre-speech self-assessment, and then once you've completed it, as soon as you can, please do the post and then go one more click to the right, then that completes that particular project off, because that's caught up quite a few people where they're thinking, well, why hasn't it shown up as merit in my area there? It's because you just need to go one more click so that you run out of right pointing arrows. On that note, that was a wonderful question to ask. It has been a good session here tonight. 60 minutes flies by when you're having fun. The thing is, it can't happen without a team helping us out. And tonight, I've been very fortunate to have Mabel Fernandez from Mangakiki, Mike Diggins from everywhere, myself, Elizabeth Leone, our PRM, and Georgie from everywhere in the Waikato, because she belongs everywhere, and I think some clubs overseas as well. It is a team effort, and the team effort doesn't stop here. If you have got any further questions, queries, and the like, so the remedy is really, really simple. Ask at your club in the first instance. Ask those who have got grey hair like myself, who have been around a little bit, so in Toastmasters. Seek advice from your mentor. Ask the question. If you're not getting the answer or not understanding it, ask it again and again and again and again. It's not a dumb question. As Georgie says, we'd rather answer it 5, 6, 7 times to make sure that it does go through, then your foundation is established and you enjoy the Pathways experience. We've heard in the past that Pathways is a bit chunky and clunky and stuff like that, but it's only that way if you allow it to. Let's break through that barrier, and it's so simple. Ask. No one is going to be embarrassed by it, and I would rather answer things time and time again until we get clarity in that particular point. The challenges of Pathways are there, but they're not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. I would like you to enjoy your journey there.
Okay.
Pick up the free path if you're entitled to it, because nothing comes free often from Toastmasters. I'd like to think that you'll be able to do that. If you've got any queries, I am literally a WhatsApp, text, phone call, or email away, as is everyone else, as I have mentioned as well. This recording will be put into the social media. Elizabeth will take care of that. And those who have asked for copies of it, you'll be able to access it as well. So I'm hoping that you've gained something from it, and that we haven't, this experience hasn't been a waste for you. Even if you've picked up one little pearl, as I'm sure that you have tonight, it's made it very worthwhile. Now, Min, you had your hand up very, very quickly as I was summarising, so it's got to be a burning question or a comment, so fire away.
Far away. As a non-English speaker, I observe at some clubs, I've been to 2, sometimes the number is not that many. So on each member session, club session, they are busy assigning roles for the next session. And this is already quite overwhelming for the newcomers. And they are just fibbling along. It has nothing to do with the cultural phase. It's just, we're just getting around and get the feeling. And I thank you. I appreciate this occasion, and I really appreciate the effort that the district is doing to do this education. So what I want to mention is that some clubs, if there are more new members from non-English speaking country, what they are struggling at, maybe the initial at finding about how to fill in the roles. Another factor that affects the loss of the membership is that the new membership is that a lot of people there either have full-time jobs with a lot of other priorities.
Yeah.
So now out of that, when they assign a role, getting prepared a role, I've been through this because I need to get online to find the resources, find how to be in certain roles. And I didn't start my journey yet, but I've tried different roles already. So I can understand how much we went through before getting onto this Pathway project. And thank you so much. I feel really supported. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for that. And look, I'm hearing that often from people who have English as a second language. English is my second language as well, so I don't use that as an excuse. I actually use it. I'd like to think that whatever culture, language you use it to your advantage, because I hear some beautiful language, beautiful phraseology which comes out, and we need to get that built into the rest of our speeches as well. And I think that's what we need to do. For you, if it is a big struggle, make sure that your mentor is there to help you. And look, there's a lady here on board, and I call her Her Majesty Tony Sharp. She's a past district director for the district, and she's wonderful in terms of mentoring. If you need any guidance in that area there, I'd be more than happy to put you on to Tony, or Tony will be able to link up with you to help you out. But please seek out help. Don't be scared to ask. We're all here to help each other. And look, if you put your hand out to me, I'll be more than happy to help out where I can as well. There'll be lots of others within your club, your area, division, definitely the district, that'll be of assistance and guidance there for you. It's a journey that you want to go along with Toastmasters and not on your own. Otherwise, the enjoyment is not going to be there for you. So I'm hoping that gives you a bit more confidence as you move forward there.
Yeah.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I make it 5 past, and I've broken my cardinal rule, and that is to go over time. But I think it was important to get that last message from Min. Elizabeth, you got your hand up. You're going to tell me off, obviously.
No. I think there's a need for more workshops like these.
Yes.
I know.
Absolutely.
And Georgie just offered to help with those. So I know Stephen's program is very full, but maybe we can organize the next one and continue with this, even for very basic explanations like meeting roles. There might be a big need for that.
I think that's very good. Thank you for picking up on that, Elizabeth. And Georgie, you're wonderful. You're probably the most wonderful person from down the Waikato there too. So thank you for availing yourself as well. Guys, it's been wonderful bringing this session to you. I've learned and I've really enjoyed the fact that we had some really, really good questions. And hopefully we'll be able to continue this on with other ones as well. So I'd like to wish you all the very best as you move forward, and wish you all a good night.
Thank you, Stephen. And
thanks, Stephen.
We will keep doing these sessions as long as you keep coming with questions.
Absolutely.
I think that's a commitment that I'm prepared to make. And I think Georgie is in the same position. And Mabel, you've been pushing me to do these sessions.
Yeah, because all the questions keep coming around the club, right? So it's quite nice to share it.
Mabel was the little pearl that we just discovered tonight. So thank you very much for helping us out, Mabel. I'm
learning as well, so it's a great thing to hear questions. Thank you, Stephen.
I'm still learning, even in my position. So
we all are.
We're all learning. We never stop learning.
They say the best way to learn is to teach it.
Yep. There's another saying about teaching, but we won't go to that.
I'll second you on that.
When the guide system started in 2015 or so, I think it was, we had what was called a master Q&A list, which was a list of every question that had ever been asked about pathways to the design team. There were well over 1,000 of these questions, and the answer to about a third of them was very simple. It involved someone talking to someone else.
You're spot on there, Mike.
That's what these sessions are all about. You'd have remembered that as well, Stephen.
Oh, absolutely. Because I'd heard that they were going to stop that Q&A, which they did. And before it did, I copied the PDF, and so I got what I could. And there were literally thousands of questions. I read through it, and that's where my base knowledge on pathways has come from, is picking up on the question, the repeated question, the repeated answer. Things have changed because it's a dynamic education system, but in general, it's pretty much the same thing. And you summed it up very, very well. It involves people communicating. That's the key to it.
Should be something we're good at.
Should be, Georgie. You're 100% right.